Hi guys, Human Central here, and welcome back to another video. And today we are going to be going back in time as the new Sontarans are going to appear in the second episode that's now been revealed, most likely for Series 13. I thought we'd go back to 1974 and their first outing in the Time Warrior. Now, Time Warrior is very interesting story. It's quite a good one. It's the beginning of Poppy's last season. It also introduced Sarah Jane to the kind of role of companion. But yeah, but before we get into the actual review itself, if you could please consider liking and subscribing. That will really help me out. But anyway, going into it, first we kind of have to talk about the story. So basically, scientists have been going missing, and they're not really sure why the scientists are going missing or how they're going missing, because there's not really much of a trace. And the Doctor kind of just, walks around, tries to find what's going on, and eventually he does. He sees the Sontaran, obviously, kind of like in this sort of, and kind of like, this teleporting state. He was kind of jumping out, and then obviously tries to follow him. Now, at the same time, Sarah Jane's been skulking around because she's a reporter or a journalist. So she's been trying to figure out what's going on with the story, and she's kind of faked away in. And yeah, it's quite interesting. So they kind of build this bit up, back and forward. Then obviously the Doctor finds out where the Sontaran went and travels back to follow him. And Sarah Jane jumps onto the TARDIS, so they go back in time, and then it kind of the average Doctor Who stuff kind of ensues. Though it's quite interesting because she then believes he kidnapped all of the scientists and he was the villain because she hadn't actually met the Sontaran. And then they do this whole back and forth bit where the castle that the Sontaran is working at is creating lots of weapons for the owner of the castle, and then obviously when Sarah Jane's at the other castle, they are trying to counteract this because they're in a bit of a mini battle type thing. And it's quite interesting because they have this whole thing and they try and break the Doctor's been captured, so they try and break into rescue the Doctor, but they actually end up, because they capture him because they think he's the evil witch wizard type thing. And then he kind of goes over to the other castle and he kind of just goes, "Oh, it wasn't really me, it's the Sontaran." They sort of half believe him, but they don't fully trust him at this point. So it's kind of a it's one of those kind of stalemates. But he agrees to help them because he obviously wants the Sontaran out. And then they kind of stop the Sontaran. The Sontaran gets tricked into killing itself, basically. And it's a good story. But yeah, I must admit, I think, as I said, it's very, very strong story. Great opener to Series 11. It's great introduction to Sarah Jane. You kind of know what she's about. She's very headstrong. She knows what she's doing. All those kind of things, which is good. I like companions who know what they're doing. They're headstrong. They're not whiny and complaining like a lot of the female companions in the early 60s were, and even some of the male companions were a bit whiny during the later seasons, like Adric and Turlo and stuff. But she's a good companion, and she makes a fair point. Like, she obviously snuck onto the TARDIS rather than being kidnapped by the Doctor on purpose, but it does count. She isn't. It does make sense for her to question the Doctor before the Sontaran's over, like another explanation, considering she doesn't know what Sontaran is. But the Sontaran in this one links, and he's really good. I must admit, I think this design is probably my second or third favourite design now, I suppose. I really do like Field Major Steyr from Sontaran Experiments design, and then I also now really like the new design that they've got for Series 13. But it's a strong design, and considering it's the first ever Sontaran, they really did nail his the Sontaran here, and basically what the Sontarans are like in this episode is more or less the same for what they're in for a lot of the episodes to come. It's not like the Daleks or the Doctor, where the first person kind of built this character and then they've kind of changed and adapted and built from it. The Sontarans are very what you see in this episode is what you're going to get in the most recent one, which would at this point be in the Sarah Jane Adventures with the last Sontaran. They're very not formulaic, but they're very you kind of get the same. It's a good, interesting one. I like the medieval period of it. This is also Pertwee's only historical story. Pertwee only ever goes into the past in this one. This is the only story he goes into the past, which is quite an interesting one, because obviously he was on Earth for most of it, present day Earth for most of it, or when it filmed it was present day Earth anyway. It's an interesting story because it's quite interesting because I think this is one of the few times in the classic story. I know in the new series it happens fairly regularly, where if there's a new villain or a new threat, the Doctor seems to have some idea about who it is beforehand. They kind of recognise the name or something like that to maybe give them more of a grandiose effect, where they've seen more of a bigger threat because the Doctor's heard of them. But in this, in the classic run, it was very rarely that the Doctor recognised the villain of the story. The only times I can really think of it happening was possibly, I seem to recall him with the Cybermen. I seem to remember him remembering the Cybermen or knowing of the Cybermen, but he didn't even know of the Daleks or anything else really. Even in some of his later stories, he still didn't really know much of many of the villains, as if they were a new villain, not a reoccurring one. But he did know the Sontarans, which would have at the time probably been make it a bigger kind of shock to people, at least, because the Doctor recognising the villain would suggest that he's encountered them before, which we haven't seen before, and also means that they must be quite ruthless. And he builds them up a lot, saying they are ruthless. I'm pretty sure they also mention their war between the Sontarans and the Rutans. So they've kind of been built up a lot as well by the Doctor, considering he knows who they are, which is unusual in the classic period. In terms of like the supporting cast, they're alright. I think a lot of them just kind of seem to be very stereotypical kind of soldier, kind of drunken soldier kind of things, and they work as an okay concept, but they're not like the main focus of the story, so they're not too bad. But I do like the scientists who's in this story. There's one main scientist that in the beginning of the episodes with Jon Pertwee's Doctor and Sarah Jane, and then he gets captured and teleported back in time by the Sontaran, and we meet him later on in the story. And basically, the way that the Lynx is controlling all these scientists to help him fix his ship, but he's like mind controlling them to help fix his ship because the technology in that time period is not as good. So he's been jumping to future points in time, or the furthest he can go with his teleport, to kind of fix his broken ship because he's crash landed. But obviously, whatever the mind control is within the episode, it needs some sort of visual recognition, because this scientist they're pretty more or less blind without his glasses on. He didn't get affected by the mind control as much because he didn't have his glasses on when it happened, which allowed him to be out of the phase and help the Doctor a little bit. He was a minor help to the story, but he was still there, helping the Doctor along, which was good. But yeah, that's more or less been my ranking of Time War. It's a very good story, nice intro to season 11. But yeah, if you have enjoyed this video, please consider liking and subscribing. See ya.